The last echoes of children's laughter had long faded from the weather-worn fence posts and trampled straw paths of Sunny Trail's petting zoo. What once was a cheerful place filled with squeals, cotton candy, and the soft bleating of goats had become a ghost of its former self. The gates were locked. The colorful signs faded under weeks of sun and rain. And in the farthest corner of the overgrown lot, behind a rusting tin shed and broken fencing, a single figure stood alone. Her name was Marigold. She was a llama, tall, dusty, and thin from weeks of neglect. Her once gleaming cream coat was now mottled with dirt and burrs. Her eyes, deep and impossibly large, carried a quiet sadness. She didn't know where the others had gone. The goats had been taken, the rabbits too. Even the piglets had been whisked away in crates during the chaos of the shutdown. One by one they had disappeared, loaded into vans and trailers. But no one came for her. Marigold had been the star attraction once. Children had lined up to feed her carrot sticks through the fence. She had a soft spot for gentle hands and often leaned into the touch of a kind child. But when the zoo closed, rumors swirling about unpaid taxes and animal welfare violations, the workers vanished almost overnight, and in the rush to evacuate, someone forgot her, or worse, someone left her. Weeks passed. The water trough dried out. The hay bales disappeared. Marigold had chewed bark off fence posts, nibbled on dying weeds, and stood for hours beneath a broken tin awning to shield herself from spring storms. Her hooves ached. Her legs wobbled. But she stayed. There was nowhere else to go. One gray April morning, an old pickup truck rumbled past the abandoned zoo. Behind the wheel sat a young woman named Brooke Patterson, 29, former vet tech, now volunteer for the Central Valley Animal Rescue Network. She wasn't supposed to be out here. She was looking for a stray dog reported near the highway. But something caught her eye as she passed. A flicker of pale movement. Something standing too still, too sad, too alone. She slowed the truck, reversed. There, beyond the cracked fence, stood Marigold. Brooke parked on the roadside, slung her field bag over her shoulder, and stepped cautiously through a gap in the fencing. The air smelled of mold and dry straw. Her boots crunched over broken feed trays and brittle plastic toys. She hadn't expected to find anything alive here. Then she saw the llama. Brooke stopped in her tracks, heart tightening. "Hey, girl," she whispered, inching forward. "You're still here?" Marigold raised her head weakly. She didn't move away. Her legs trembled just from standing. Brooke approached slowly, hand out, palm open. The llama leaned forward, not with fear but a desperate trust. When Brooke touched her nose gently, Marigold closed her eyes and let out a low, raspy hum, as if to say, "Finally." An hour later, Brooke was on the phone with her rescue contact, eyes scanning the skeletal remains of the petting zoo. "I've got a live llama out here, underweight, dehydrated, possibly hoof rot. We need transport, fast." The voice on the other end, Lisa Brenner, co-founder of Second Chance Sanctuary, swore under her breath. "Jesus, we thought they took everything." "I'll call Jeremy. He's got the trailer. Hang tight." By the time the trailer arrived that afternoon, Marigold had been fed handfuls of alfalfa pellets and given slow, measured sips of water. Brooke stayed by her side the whole time, humming softly, brushing the worst of the debris from her coat. Marigold didn't resist. She didn't fight. She stood in quiet dignity, as if she'd been waiting for this moment longer than even she could remember. Getting her into the trailer took patience and coaxing. She staggered once, nearly collapsed. But with Brooke's gentle voice guiding her, she stepped up the ramp and into the straw-lined trailer. The door closed behind her with a final click. The abandoned petting zoo faded in the rearview mirror, its silence now complete. But for the first time in weeks, Marigold wasn't alone. The trailer rumbled down County Route 46 as dusk painted the California sky in hues of violet and burnt orange. Inside, Marigold stood unsteady on her feet. The straw under her hooves felt strange, but softer than the cracked earth she'd been sleeping on for weeks. Every bump in the road made her sway, but she held on, her legs trembling more from weakness than fear. Brooke drove behind the trailer in her pickup, eyes locked on the taillights ahead. She called Lisa again as they neared the turnoff for Second Chance Sanctuary. "She's in rough shape. I don't think she's eaten properly in a month. I can see her ribs, and her coat's a mess. She might have parasites." Lisa sighed into the phone. "We've seen worse. She's lucky you found her." Brooke didn't answer immediately. Her grip tightened on the steering wheel. She couldn't shake the look in the llama's eyes. The stillness, the resignation. It wasn't just survival instinct. It was grief. 15 minutes later, the convoy pulled into a wide gravel driveway. The Second Chance Sanctuary didn't look like much from the road. Just a faded red barn, a paddock, and a scattering of outbuildings nestled in a ring of low hills. But it was a place of life and healing. Horses with crooked legs, goats with missing ears, blind sheep, all had found safety here. Lisa stood waiting in the floodlight glow, clipboard in hand, silver-gray braid tucked under a ball cap. Jeremy, the driver, hopped out of the truck and met her with a nod. "She's a big girl," he said. "Didn't flinch once on the road." Lisa peered through the trailer slats. "We'll get her in the quarantine pen. Brooke, you coming?" Brooke was already walking across the gravel, medkit in hand. "Of course." The unloading was slow. Marigold hesitated at the ramp, her legs stiff and uncooperative. But Brooke stood beside her, whispering encouragement. Lisa sprinkled feed pellets along the ramp like breadcrumbs, and slowly, with effort, the llama descended. She collapsed the moment she stepped onto the straw. "Don't panic," Brooke said quickly, crouching. "She's exhausted. Just let her lie for now." Lisa nodded and handed her a blanket. "Cover her. We'll get her on her feet later." The quarantine pen was clean, sheltered, and well lit. Brooke stayed with her well past midnight, checking vitals, gently brushing out tangles, inspecting her hooves. She cleaned a deep crack in her front left foot and applied ointment. Then came a dose of electrolytes, a small portion of soaked pellets, and finally, fresh hay within reach. Marigold didn't eat at first. She only watched Brooke with those vast, dark eyes. "You're safe," Brooke murmured. "No more empty nights." She stroked the llama's neck until her breathing slowed. Outside, the night was quiet except for the rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. But inside the pen, something was beginning. Something slow, careful, and essential. Trust. Morning brought wind and rain. Lisa stood on the porch with a mug of black coffee, watching clouds roll over the hills. Brooke emerged from the barn, her hoodie soaked, but her face bright. "She stood up," Brooke said. "For about 5 minutes, ate a quarter of her hay, drank some water." Lisa smiled. "That's more than I expected on day one." She let me brush her chest, no flinching. Lisa stepped down from the porch and joined her. "We'll keep her isolated a few more days, then get the vet out. In the meantime, you think she'd tolerate company? One of the minis, maybe?" Brooke tilted her head, thinking. "Maybe not yet. Let her rest first. She's been through hell." They walked to the pen together. Marigold was standing now, albeit with effort, ears twitching toward the sound of their boots on gravel. Lisa stopped short. "She's beautiful." Brooke nodded. "Even half-starved and scared." Lisa glanced sideways. "You've got that look." "What look?" "The one that says you're not just another volunteer. You're falling for this one." Brooke didn't deny it. "She reminds me of someone." Lisa said nothing more. She didn't have to. As the days passed, Marigold's recovery unfolded in slow, quiet steps. She began eating more. First just hay, then a little grain. She let Brooke touch her sides, clean her hooves. The wound on her front leg began to heal. Her eyes grew brighter. She didn't like the vet, a kind man named Dr. Levin, but tolerated his exam. No major infections, just malnutrition and overgrown hooves. He filed them down gently, gave her vitamins and dewormers, and declared her a survivor. "She's lucky," he told Brooke afterward. "Llamas don't usually last long alone like that. She had to want to live." Brooke watched Marigold lying in the straw, chewing slowly, gaze resting on the hills beyond the fence. "She did," Brooke said. "She just needed someone to notice." One afternoon, Lisa led Brooke into the paddock behind the barn. A dozen animals grazed lazily. 2 ponies, 3 elderly goats, a miniature donkey, and a toothless alpaca named Fergus, who thought he was a sheepdog. "We'll move Marigold here once she's strong enough," Lisa said. "They're mellow, no drama." Brooke smiled. "Fergus will probably try to hurt her." Lisa laughed. "Let him try." The sanctuary had room for one more, but Brooke knew the future wasn't guaranteed. Donations had been down for months. A fire had damaged one of the barns last fall. Lisa was behind on repairs. Every animal added meant more vet bills, more feed, more hours. Brooke leaned on the fence and exhaled. "Do we have the budget for a permanent resident?" Lisa didn't answer right away. "We don't," she said finally. "But we'll make it work. We always do." Brooke looked down at her hands. I can foster her. Temporarily. I've got land. A stable. Just a few acres, but it's quiet. Lisa gave her a long look. You'd do that? If it helps. And if she wants to come with me. Lisa smiled. Ask her. That evening, Brooke stood in the quarantine pen, the wind tugging at her hoodie. Marigold looked up as she approached, then stepped closer. Brooke crouched, held out a halter. Would you come with me, girl, just for a while? The llama blinked slowly, then nuzzled her arm. Brooke took it as a yes. Brooke spent the next 2 days preparing her modest property on the outskirts of Oak Hollow. It was a sleepy town nestled in the Sierra foothills, the kind of place where time stretched a little slower, and neighbors still waved from porches. Her land wasn't much. 3.5 acres lined with oak trees, a red pole barn that needed a new coat of paint, and a single paddock once used for the horse she lost 2 years ago to old age. She cleared the weeds, filled the water trough, laid fresh straw in the stall, and checked the fencing twice. It had been a long time since an animal had lived there. A part of her, the quiet, grieving part, was nervous to let anyone else in. But Marigold wasn't just any animal. By the 3rd morning, Lisa agreed it was time. She's still underweight, but she's strong enough for a short ride. If you're sure about this. Brooke nodded. I've never been more sure. Lisa leaned on the paddock rail and raised an eyebrow. You going to keep calling her Marigold? Brooke smiled faintly. Actually, no. I think she deserves a name that doesn't come from a name tag nailed to a petting zoo gate. Lisa chuckled. Got one in mind? Brooke looked over at the llama, who was sniffing the breeze through the quarantine gate. Juniper. Lisa tilted her head. Like the tree? Yeah. Resilient. Grows in rough soil, survives drought. Has this wild beauty to it. Lisa nodded slowly, a soft expression in her eyes. Juniper. That suits her. The ride to Brooke's home took just under an hour. This time, Juniper, as Brooke now called her, didn't wobble as much. She stood taller in the trailer, steadier on her hooves. She even glanced curiously out the slats as they turned off the highway, as if sensing this wasn't another temporary stop. Brooke opened the trailer ramp slowly, expecting hesitation. Instead, Juniper stepped down on her own. The sun streamed through the trees, dappling the grass with gold. Birds chirped from the canopy. In the distance, a wind chime clinked lazily on the porch of the main house. Juniper paused at the edge of the ramp, lifted her long neck, and sniffed the air. Then she walked, slow but sure, into her new home. Brooke didn't say anything. She just walked alongside her, hand resting lightly on her halter, eyes welling as they reached the paddock gate. There was something sacred about that moment, as if both of them, woman and animal, understood this wasn't just a change of scenery. It was the beginning of something neither had dared to hope for. The first week was a learning curve for them both. Juniper was cautious. She didn't like the sound of trucks on the nearby road, flinched at the metallic clang of the barn door, and sometimes paced restlessly at night. Brooke watched from the porch with a blanket around her shoulders, never forcing contact, just being there. By day 4, Juniper started humming again. Soft, fluttering sounds, especially when Brooke arrived with feed. By day 6, she accepted gentle brushing and nuzzled Brooke's hip when she wasn't looking. And by the end of the week, Juniper lay down in the paddock for the first time, curled in the straw with her head tilted toward the setting sun. Brooke sat nearby with her journal, barely breathing, afraid to break the moment. She didn't write much that evening, just one line. She's safe now, and so am I. Word spread fast in Oak Hollow that Brooke Patterson had taken in an abandoned llama. Her neighbor Tom stopped by with his daughter and a bag of apples. Heard about what you're doing. Brave thing. You need anything, fencing help, grain, whatever, you let us know. The next day, the local feed store owner offered Brooke a discount on llama feed. By Sunday, a middle schooler from the FFA program showed up and asked if she could come by after school to help brush Juniper. Brooke hadn't expected any of it. She'd thought people would look at her like she was crazy for taking in a half-starved animal with no known history. But instead, she felt supported, seen. Lisa came to visit the following Monday. She stood in the paddock, arms crossed, watching Juniper wander the fence line with slow grace. She looks different already, Lisa said. She's gained a little weight, Brooke replied. Appetite's good, coat's shinier. No, I mean, she looks different, like she knows she belongs now. Brooke nodded. She's starting to. I think I am too. They stood in silence for a while, listening to the wind in the trees. Then Lisa turned. You know what would help her thrive even more? What? A companion. Brooke blinked. Another llama? Or an alpaca? A goat? Something calm. She's social. You can see it. She perks up when the neighbor's dogs bark. She watches the birds. She needs connection. Brooke hesitated. I don't know if I'm ready for more than one. Lisa smiled gently. Think about it. That night, as Brooke sat with a cup of tea on the porch, Juniper came to the fence and stood silently watching her. Her ears flicked forward, tail swishing lazily. The sun had dipped below the hills, casting the yard in soft orange glow. Brooke rose slowly and crossed the grass. Juniper didn't move away. She ran her fingers through the soft fur under the llama's chin. I've been thinking, Brooke murmured. Maybe we both need a herd. Doesn't have to be big. Just someone else, a friend. Juniper didn't hum this time. She just pressed her forehead lightly against Brooke's shoulder. It was answer enough. 2 weeks passed and Juniper's transformation was becoming unmistakable. Her coat, once dull and matted, now shimmered faintly in the afternoon light. Her walk was steadier, more confident. She no longer hesitated at strange sounds or shadows. She'd begun exploring the corners of the paddock with curiosity, not caution, and would often rest in the soft straw with her legs tucked neatly beneath her, eyes half closed in contentment. But recovery wasn't always linear. Some nights were rough. It started with a scream. Brooke bolted upright in bed around 2 o'clock a.m., heart pounding, the distant guttural cry still echoing in her ears. She threw on a hoodie, grabbed a flashlight, and sprinted out the front door barefoot. Her breath caught when she reached the paddock. Juniper was pacing wildly, snorting and kicking up dirt with her front legs. Her eyes were wide with terror, ears pinned back, body rigid with panic. Brooke clicked off the flashlight and approached slowly. Hey. Hey, girl. It's okay. It's okay. You're safe. Juniper didn't respond. She was caught in something deeper. Something Brooke couldn't see but felt all the same. A memory, perhaps. A nightmare. Maybe the sound of gates slamming. The rush of frightened animals. The absence of anyone who cared. Brooke stood by her for over an hour, whispering, humming, waiting. Eventually, Juniper slowed her frantic movement and slumped to the ground, exhausted. Brooke sat in the straw beside her, back against the fence, legs drawn up to her chest. She didn't leave until the sun began to rise. The next day, Brooke called Lisa. Night panic, Lisa said after listening. We've seen it with horses from hoarding cases, even sheep. Trauma doesn't just go away because they're safe now. Brooke rubbed her forehead. I want to do everything right, but sometimes it feels like I can't reach her. You are reaching her, Lisa said firmly. Every day she eats, every time she lets you near her. That's her way of saying so. Just keep showing up. That's the work. I want her to know she'll never be abandoned again. She already knows. But healing isn't just about safety, it's about time. Later that week, Brooke received an unexpected visit. She was spreading hay when a black SUV pulled up to the gravel drive. A woman in business casual attire stepped out, clipboard in hand. Brooke felt her stomach twist. Can I help you? The woman flashed a badge. Sarah Dillon, County Animal Welfare Services. I'm doing follow-ups on the Sunny Trails closure. Brooke nodded cautiously. I rescued one of the animals from there. I know, that's why I'm here. Mind if I take a look? Brooke led her to the paddock, heart pounding. Juniper stood on the far side, watching silently. Sarah stepped through the gate slowly. She didn't approach Juniper directly, just observed her from a respectful distance. She's gained weight, coat looks healthy, movement strong. She was severely malnourished when we found her, probably hadn't had clean water in over a week. Sarah made notes, then looked up. You have vet records? Brooke handed over the folder she'd kept organized from day one. Exam dates, medication logs, photos of her hooves before and after. Sarah skimmed it, then closed the folder. She's lucky. Others weren't. Brooke hesitated. How bad was it? Sarah exhaled. Over 30 animals removed. 2 were already dead when the team arrived. Some were shipped off to questionable rescues that turned out to be brokers. We're still tracking down 3 goats and a donkey. Brooke felt her throat tighten. Juniper, She was just left behind. No one even tried to take her. Sarah nodded grimly. Llamas aren't profitable. Not for meat, not for resale. She was probably too much trouble to load. The words hit Brooke like a slap. She turned to Juniper, who stood now near the trough, flicking her ears at a crow perched on the fence. They left her because she wasn't worth anything. Sarah's tone softened. But you saw her, and you gave her worth again. Brooke didn't respond. She didn't need to. Sarah left 20 minutes later with a note in her file. Animal in excellent hands. No concerns. That evening, Brooke sat in the paddock with a bowl of chopped apples and carrots. Juniper had grown fond of the mix, especially the green apple chunks. She walked over slowly, sniffed the air, and lowered her head to eat from Brooke's palm. You were invisible to them, Brooke whispered, but not to me. Juniper chewed quietly, her large eyes steady. I know what that's like, you know, Brooke continued. To feel like you've been discarded. I used to work in an ER for animals, burned out. When I crashed, no one called. I was just gone. Juniper leaned closer. I think we both needed to be found. She didn't know why she was telling the llama this, but it felt right. Juniper listened better than most people she knew. When the bowl was empty, Juniper rested her head lightly on Brooke's shoulder. A gesture not forced or trained, but instinctive. For a long moment they stayed like that, woman and animal, connected by something deeper than words. The next morning, Brooke found a letter in her mailbox. It was from Lisa. Inside was a photo and a note. Meet Clover, gentle 10-year-old pygmy goat. Former pet. Owner passed. She's been lonely but calm. I think she'd get along with Juniper. Want to try a visit? Brooke stared at the photo. The goat had the kindest eyes she'd ever seen. She walked to the fence, letter in hand. Hey, Juniper, she called softly. How do you feel about roommates? The llama twitched one ear, then turned slowly to look at her. Brooke smiled. I'll take that as a maybe. The sanctuary truck arrived just before noon on a warm Thursday. Brooke had spent the morning cleaning the paddock and double-checking the gates. She was nervous, more than she expected. Introducing two animals wasn't just about shared space. It was about emotional chemistry, trust, vulnerability. Juniper had come so far in just a few weeks. Brooke didn't want anything to set her back. Lisa stepped out of the truck with her usual calm confidence, a lead rope in hand. At the end of it walked a small, gray-speckled pygmy goat. She was compact and round, with a thick coat and a tiny tail that flicked constantly like a metronome. Her eyes were bright and soft, and her legs carried her forward with a light, confident step. She doesn't scare easy, Lisa said as Clover trotted up the ramp and into the yard. I figured she'd be a good first friend. Brooke crouched down, letting Clover approach. The goat sniffed her boots, then nudged her hand for scratches. She's not shy, Brooke said with a smile. Nope, she's a people goat. Lost her owner 6 months ago. Lived with a retired school teacher. They watched TV together. Brooke chuckled, but her heart clenched a little. She hasn't had herd mates since? Lisa shook her head. No, just people. Brooke turned toward the paddock, where Juniper stood on the far side, watching. Her ears twitched forward with curiosity, not alarm. She knows something's happening, Brooke murmured. Lisa opened the gate. Let's find out how she feels about guests. The first meeting was cautious but peaceful. Clover entered the paddock with head high, tail wagging, and made a slow beeline toward Juniper, who held her ground. The two animals circled each other with soft snorts and low noises. Juniper took a step forward, and Clover did the same. Then, in a moment that felt like it had been rehearsed by instinct, Clover laid down near the water trough, curling her legs beneath her. Juniper didn't lie down, not right away, but she didn't walk away either. By sunset, they were sharing hay. That night, for the first time since coming to Brooke's, Juniper didn't pace after dark. Instead, she lay beside the goat in the straw, both of them curled close, warm in the early spring chill. Brooke watched them from the window and felt something shift. Something light, something hopeful. Over the next few days, their rhythm emerged. Clover was active and curious, constantly exploring the fence line, nibbling at leaves, jumping onto overturned feed buckets just for fun. Juniper followed her slowly, watching. It was as though the goat's energy filled a quiet space that had long been hollow. And in return, Juniper gave Clover something gentle, a calming presence the goat never seemed to have known. They were opposites, but in the way puzzle pieces are. Different shapes, perfect fit. Brooke began noticing small changes. Juniper's tail was more animated. Her hums came more frequently, especially in the morning when she spotted Brooke approaching with the grain bucket. She began to nuzzle Clover, first gently, then playfully. One afternoon, Brooke even caught Juniper trying to mimic the goat's climbing by stepping up onto a low, flat rock in the corner of the paddock. It didn't last long, but it made her laugh. "I think you two are bad influences on each other," she teased. But she meant it in the best way. Then came the visit from the news crew. It started with a simple social media post. A photo Brooke had taken of Juniper and Clover napping side by side under the oak tree. She posted it to the sanctuary's page with the caption, "From forgotten to family, meet Juniper and Clover, survivors, friends, and proof that second chances are worth it." The photo went viral. Within 48 hours, the sanctuary's inbox exploded. Donations poured in. Offers to foster and adopt animals flooded Lisa's desk. And on Monday, a local CBS affiliate reached out to ask if they could film a segment at Brooke's place. "I don't want the attention," Brooke said at first. "This isn't about me." Lisa gently pushed back. "But it is about people like you. The ones who take the risk, who show up. Let people see what that looks like." Brooke reluctantly agreed. The camera crew arrived on a crisp morning, all sneakers and windbreakers and coffee cups. The producer was kind, the anchor more charismatic than expected, and the cameraman had a soft spot for animals. They spent over an hour filming Juniper and Clover together, interspersed with shots of Brooke walking the paddock, brushing Juniper, feeding the animals. Brooke gave an interview standing near the fence, sunlight streaming through the trees behind her. "I didn't plan on taking her in," she said. "I just couldn't leave her behind, and I think maybe she couldn't leave me behind either." The anchor smiled. "And now she has a friend." "Now we all do," Brooke said. When the segment aired, it ran longer than expected. People were moved. Viewers called in with offers to donate, to volunteer, even to adopt. Someone created a hashtag, Juniper and Clover. Within days, the sanctuary's website was redesigned, with a whole section dedicated to their story. But with visibility came scrutiny, and not all of it was kind. One evening, Brooke received an anonymous email. "You're exploiting that animal for clout. If you cared, you wouldn't be parading her around on TV. You're just like the zoo that left her." Brooke stared at the screen, cold creeping into her chest. She closed the email and walked outside. Juniper and Clover were grazing by the fence. The wind rustled the oak leaves. The light was soft and golden. Brooke leaned on the fence and took a deep breath. "You're not a story," she whispered. "You're a soul. And I see you." Juniper lifted her head and stared at her. Long, steady. Brooke nodded. "I'll protect that, no matter what." A few days later, Lisa stopped by with news. "We've been contacted by someone in Oregon," she said, sliding into a porch chair. "A large sanctuary. Funded, licensed, vetted. They have space for 10 large animals. They saw the story." Brooke's stomach sank. "Are they asking for Juniper?" "No," Lisa said quickly. "But they're offering, and I said I'd talk to you about it. It's up to you." Brooke looked out at the paddock. Juniper and Clover stood under the oak tree, chewing side by side. The goat pressed her head gently into Juniper's side. Brooke shook her head. "She's home, so is Clover. I won't break that bond." Lisa smiled. "That's what I thought you'd say." That night, Brooke journaled again. "I never thought love would come in the form of a gangly, silent llama and a tiny, demanding goat. But here we are. I'm not rescuing them anymore. We're rescuing each other." She signed the page with a drawing, a clumsy little doodle of a goat perched on the back of a llama. And beneath it, one word: family. Summer came slowly to Oak Hollow. The long days brought dry heat, golden fields, and the buzzing of cicadas. For Juniper and Clover, life had settled into a peaceful rhythm. Every morning, Brooke opened the barn and was greeted by soft humming from Juniper and a joyful bleat from Clover. They ate side by side, napped beneath the shade of the oak, and roamed the paddock in lazy companionship. Brooke spent more time outside now than she had in years. She fixed fences, painted the barn doors red again, and even started growing tomatoes in the patch of soil that had been dry and forgotten for 3 summers. The animals gave her purpose. More than purpose, they gave her peace. But peace, as Brooke had learned, never stayed untouched forever. It began with tire tracks. One morning, While walking the fence line, she noticed fresh indentations in the dirt near the front gate. The gravel had been flattened, and a strip of broken weeds ran along the side of the road. Someone had pulled off the main road, sat there, then left. She frowned, checked the gate latch, still locked, and looked up and down the road. Nothing. Just oak trees and the hum of morning insects. She shook it off. 2 days later, she found a man standing by the fence. He wasn't on the property, not technically. He stood just outside the boundary line, arms crossed, wearing dark sunglasses and a trucker's cap. His clothes were clean but worn, jeans, boots, and a pale blue shirt that had seen better days. Juniper noticed him first. She froze halfway to the trough, ears pinned back, body stiff. Brooke stepped outside the house cautiously. "Can I help you?" The man turned slowly, pushing the sunglasses to his forehead. "Didn't mean to startle anyone. Just admiring your livestock." Brooke approached the fence but didn't cross it. "They're not for sale." He raised an eyebrow. "Didn't say they were." She waited. After a long pause, he nodded toward Juniper. "That one came from Sunny Trails, didn't she?" Brooke felt her shoulders tense. "How do you know that?" "Let's just say I knew the place, knew the folks that ran it. Not surprised it shut down." Brooke narrowed her eyes. "Are you a relative of the owners?" He smiled slightly. "Something like that." Juniper let out a low hum, not one of contentment but of warning. "I think you should leave," Brooke said firmly. The man nodded, almost politely. "Sure, just curious, that's all. Pretty animal. Shame what happened to the place." He turned and walked back to a silver pickup truck parked a few yards down the road. As he climbed in, Brooke memorized the partial license plate, 3ZL. "Lisa came over that afternoon." "Sounds like Wes Harlan," she said after Brooke told her everything. "Who?" "Brother of Sunny Trail's former owner. Ran transport for them. Rumor is he was brokering animals under the table. Shady deals. Backyard zoos. Meat buyers." Brooke felt bile rise in her throat. "And he came here?" Lisa nodded grimly. "Probably trying to see if there's anything worth taking back, or intimidating you." Brooke glanced toward the paddock. Juniper was lying beside Clover, but her gaze remained fixed on the front fence. "I won't let him take her." "He can't. You have vet records, rescue confirmation, adoption papers. She's yours." "But that look in her eyes," Brooke whispered. "She remembers him." That night, Brooke didn't sleep. She sat on the porch with a thermos of coffee, shotgun across her lap. She'd grown up around farms. She wasn't naive. Not everyone saw animals the way she did. But Juniper wasn't just livestock. She was family. So was Clover. And family was defended, no matter the cost. Sometime around 2 a.m., headlights flared briefly at the end of the road. A vehicle slowed, paused near the gate. Brooke stood, hands clenched. Then the truck moved on. But she didn't go back inside. Not until sunrise. A week passed without further sightings. Juniper seemed to relax again. Clover remained her cheerful, bouncing self. Brooke tried to resume normalcy, but something had shifted. A layer of tension now coated the air, invisible but real. Then one morning, Brooke returned from the feed store to find the gate ajar. Not broken, unlatched. She raced to the paddock. Both animals were there, frightened but unharmed. Juniper had mud on her side, and Clover's water bucket had been tipped. Nothing stolen, no tools missing. But it was clear, someone had been inside. Brooke installed cameras that same afternoon. She called the sheriff's department and filed a report. The deputy listened carefully, but offered little beyond a patrol car doing occasional drive-bys. Lisa brought over a motion sensor and a solar light. "We'll make it harder for anyone to sneak in," she said. "And if he tries again, we'll have him on camera." Brooke nodded, jaw tight. But that night, as she stood at the window watching Juniper and Clover curl beside each other, she felt the old helplessness creeping in. She'd known trauma, the kind that didn't heal with time. And now Juniper was staring down hers again, brought back to the brink by the ghosts of a past she hadn't chosen. Brooke made a promise to herself that night. If they came back, she wouldn't just wait. She'd fight. 2 nights later, the camera caught him. The footage showed a figure in a dark hoodie stepping onto the property around 1:42 a.m. He didn't head for the barn. He didn't approach the animals. Instead, he walked straight to the gate, looked up, saw the camera, and turned around. But not before Brooke caught a glimpse of his face under the hood. It was the man from the fence. The sheriff's office opened a case. Lisa contacted a lawyer. And Brooke, unable to sleep, sat in the paddock until morning, back pressed against Juniper's side, her hand on Clover's woolly shoulder. She whispered to them, over and over, "You're not going back. Not ever. I don't care what it takes." Juniper didn't hum this time. She just leaned into her and stayed there, silent and still. The police report was filed, the motion lights installed, and the cameras, all 4 of them, blinked steadily from their perches on the barn, the porch, the paddock gate, and the oak tree. It gave Brooke a kind of structured comfort, but not true peace. Peace, after all, required trust. In people, in systems, in a world that too often failed to protect the voiceless. And Juniper, standing silently near the trough while birds chirped around her, was a symbol of that fragility. Lisa had put Brooke in touch with a lawyer named Eli Garrett, a calm, serious man in his 50s with a gray beard and a quiet, authoritative voice. He had handled animal cruelty cases for more than 2 decades and agreed to take the matter pro bono, moved by Juniper's story. Eli drove out to Brooke's farm 2 days after the incident on camera. They walked the property together, and he reviewed her documents: vet records, ownership transfer papers from the sanctuary, rescue documentation with timestamps. "You're solid on paper," he said, flipping through the binder. "This man has no legal claim. Even if he was loosely affiliated with the zoo, he abandoned the animal. Period." Brooke nodded, her voice low. "Then why does it still feel like he could take her?" Eli looked out over the field, where Juniper stood beside Clover, tails flicking in the heat. "Because people like him don't follow rules. They count on fear, on silence, on victims giving up. But you're not that kind of person, are you?" "No," Brooke said softly. "Not anymore." Eli handed her his card. "If he shows up again, you call me and document everything. I'll file a protective order if it comes to that." That night, Juniper was restless again. She didn't pace, but she stayed on her feet long after dark, head turned toward the front of the property. Clover curled beside her eventually, bleating softly in her sleep. Brooke, sitting in her hoodie with a flashlight tucked in her lap, watched from behind the paddock gate. "You feel it too, huh?" she whispered. "The way danger lingers." Juniper didn't move. She was a statue in the silver moonlight, unmoving except for the slow twitch of her ear. 2 days later, Brooke received a letter in her mailbox. No return address. Typed, "You're not safe with her there. Get rid of the llama or we'll come take her back ourselves. This is your last warning." Brooke froze in her driveway, the note trembling in her hand. Then she went inside, scanned the letter, printed 3 copies, and emailed one to Eli. By the end of the day, he'd filed for a cease and desist. Still, it wasn't enough. "You should come stay at the sanctuary," Lisa said over the phone that evening. "We've got extra staff this week. You could bring both girls, just for a few days." But Brooke shook her head. "If we leave, it's like admitting they were right, that I can't protect them." "Brooke, this isn't about pride. It's about staying safe." "I am safe, for now, and I'm not letting her think I'd ever leave her behind." There was a pause. "I get it," Lisa finally said. "But don't shut people out. You're not alone in this." She wasn't. That weekend, something extraordinary happened. Brooke had barely posted an update on Juniper and Clover, just a picture of them under the oak tree with the caption, "Still standing, still safe, still together," when messages began pouring in. Not just comments, but offers. One from a local fencing company offering to reinforce her perimeter free of charge. Another from a nonprofit security group that helped animal sanctuaries install alarm systems. And more. Donations, volunteer offers, messages from across the country. People who had followed Juniper's journey from starvation to safety now wanted to help defend that safety. By Monday, her inbox was full. And then came a call from a woman named Marissa Payne. "I'm a civil rights attorney in Portland," she said. "I saw the news piece a few weeks back. My daughter fell in love with that llama. Now we see she's being threatened. We'd like to help. My firm will draft a restraining order against anyone harassing you or threatening removal of the animal." Brooke blinked. "But you don't even know me." "I know enough. Some people look the other way when cruelty happens. Some people show up. You showed up. So will we." The fencing crew arrived Wednesday. By the end of the day, Brooke's 3-acre lot had a new steel-reinforced perimeter, new locks on both gates, and motion detection floodlights tied to her front porch. She stood beside one of the workers as they tested the locks. "I don't know what to say," she murmured. The man, mid-40s, freckled, a quiet type, shrugged. "You don't have to say anything. You saved her. And I got daughters. I'd want someone to protect them like that." He paused. "Funny thing. My youngest asked if she could visit the llama. Maybe pet her." Brooke smiled. "Of course. Anytime." That night, Brooke wrote again in her journal. "Sometimes it's not the pain that breaks us. It's the fear that no one will stand with us when it comes. But this time, people stood. Strangers, neighbors, lawyers, welders. They stood. So now we can too." She looked out the window. Clover was asleep near the barn wall. Juniper stood tall under the oak, her eyes turned upward toward the stars. Brooke whispered, "I think we're going to be okay." But peace is never permanent. The following Friday, while sorting feed bags in the barn, Brooke received a call from Deputy Daniels, the same officer who had filed her first police report. "Brooke, I need to let you know something," he said, voice grave. "What is it?" "We found Wes Harlan's truck, burned out, north side of Sierra Road, registered to his name, but no sign of him." Brooke felt the air thin around her. "Is he missing?" "We're treating it as suspicious. No body, no wallet. His phone was dumped near a creek 5 miles away." Brooke stared at the floor of the barn, the air smelling of hay and warm wood. "What does that mean for us?" she asked finally. "It means you need to stay alert," Daniels said. "If he's gone underground, he could still be watching. But it also means we're escalating the case. You'll get more patrols, and we're moving the investigation up the chain." Brooke nodded, barely hearing him. After the call ended, she sat down beside a hay bale and tried to breathe. It was hard, because even though she was surrounded by fences, by allies, by lights and laws, fear had a way of slipping through cracks no one else could see. And Juniper, as if sensing it, came to the barn door, humming softly. Brooke looked up at her and managed a small, broken smile. "You're still standing," she whispered. "So I will too." It rained for 3 straight days. Oak Hollow, usually dry by mid-June, was cloaked in mist and low clouds. The hills were swallowed in gray. The red clay roads turned slick, and the grass, already golden with early drought, drank deeply and darkened to green again. Brooke didn't mind the rain. She found a strange comfort in its rhythm, its consistency, something she could rely on. She stayed busy, reorganizing feed bins, oiling tack she hadn't used in years, and mending a tear in Clover's little waterproof coat. But on the 3rd night, something inside her finally cracked. She was brushing Juniper's coat in the barn. Slow, meditative strokes, the kind she knew the llama had grown to love, when the tears came. Not loud, not desperate, just quiet. She didn't even notice them at first, not until one rolled down her cheek and fell onto Juniper's fur. Juniper flinched, just barely, then stood still again. "I'm sorry," Brooke whispered. "I didn't mean to. It's not you. I'm just—" She trailed off, kneeling beside Juniper and leaning her head gently against the animal's side. Her body shook with the sobs she had held back for months. No, years. Since the day she left the emergency vet clinic after working herself into a breakdown. Since the week she stopped returning her friends' calls. Since the moment she convinced herself that being alone was the only way not to be hurt again. "I failed them," she said, her voice cracking. "Every animal I couldn't save. Everyone I had to put down because there wasn't enough time or money or space." Juniper made no sound, but her presence was grounding. Warm. Solid. She didn't walk away, didn't flinch. She simply stood there, a silent witness. Brooke stayed on the floor for almost an hour, her hand resting on Juniper's side, the rain pattering steadily on the roof. She didn't feel better after, but she felt lighter. The next morning the sky cleared. Clover was back to her bounding, energetic self, headbutting a feed bucket across the paddock in what had clearly become a favorite game. Juniper followed her with more bounce in her step than usual, and even trotted briefly along the fence when a rabbit darted through the tall grass. Brooke stood at the kitchen window with her coffee and smiled. The storm was breaking, not just outside, but within. She'd made a decision the night before, and she was ready. That afternoon, she emailed the local community center. She'd written the message a dozen times before finally hitting send. "Hi, my name is Brooke Patterson. I've been fostering a rescued llama and a pygmy goat, both survivors of severe neglect. I'd like to offer a gentle animal therapy session for children or adults dealing with anxiety, trauma, or loss. If there's interest, I'd be willing to host one small group each week, at no charge." She didn't expect much, but the reply came within hours. "Brooke, yes, yes, we've been hoping for something like this. I have 2 families in mind already. Thank you so much." The following week, Brooke held her first session. 4 children came. 2 had lost parents. 1 had selective mutism. The 4th was recently adopted from foster care and hadn't spoken a word in days. Brooke didn't push. She laid out blankets, put fruit and carrot sticks in baskets, and let Juniper and Clover do the rest. Clover charmed them instantly, nosing into backpacks, gently nibbling at shoelaces, and hopping into a child's lap as though it was the most natural thing in the world. Laughter filled the paddock within minutes. Juniper was slower to approach, but when the quietest girl extended a hand with a slice of apple, the llama stepped forward and took it delicately. The child's eyes lit up. She didn't say anything, but she smiled. And for Brooke, that was everything. Word spread quickly. By the 3rd week, Brooke had a wait list of visitors. Not just children, but adults, teens, even a Vietnam veteran who came just to sit under the oak and watch Juniper graze. Lisa visited again and watched one of the sessions from a distance. "This is what she was meant for," she said softly. "Not to be petted behind a fence for ticket money, but to heal." Brooke nodded. "And I think she's healing too." She paused. "I think I am." But as the days passed, the threat lingered in the background like a shadow cast at dusk. The sheriff hadn't called in a week. No new leads on Wes Harlan. The cease and desist had been served by mail, but there was no way of knowing if it had reached him, or if he cared. One evening, Brooke stood by the paddock as the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the field. She heard a rustle behind her. A car door, soft gravel under boots. She turned. It was Deputy Daniels. He looked tired. "Evening," he said, tipping his hat. Brooke's heart quickened. "What's happened?" "We have an update," he said, "but you're not going to like it." She stood still. He hesitated, then said, "We found Wes Harlan, in Nevada. He was arrested in a sting involving illegal animal trade." Brooke exhaled, stunned. "So, he's in custody?" "Technically, yes, but he made bail." Her stomach dropped. Daniels held up a hand. "The good news is, he's out of our jurisdiction, and now he's on federal watch lists. He'd be insane to come near you again." "And the bad news?" Daniels looked down at the dirt. "He named you during booking, said you stole property from his family." Brooke felt the weight return like a rock in her gut. "Can he take any action?" "Unlikely. He has no proof of ownership, and your documentation is airtight. But I'm here because I want you to know. Be careful. Keep those cameras up. Don't let your guard down." Brooke nodded. "Thank you. I won't." That night, she stayed in the paddock long after dark. Juniper came to stand beside her, quiet and steady. Brooke rested her hand on the llama's back. "Storm's not over," she said softly. "But we've weathered worse, haven't we?" Juniper let out a soft hum, barely audible over the wind, and Brooke closed her eyes. She didn't know what would come next, but she knew what she had: a home, a herd, a purpose, and she would fight for all of it, until the very end. It happened on a Sunday. The sun was already high when Brooke stepped onto the porch, mug in hand, expecting another lazy morning in the paddock. Clover usually greeted her with a chorus of impatient bleats, hopping at the gate like a wind-up toy. But this morning, the air felt wrong. Too still, too warm, like the breath before a scream. Then she smelled it. Smoke. Not the distant, hazy kind from wildfires in the hills, but sharp, bitter, acrid. Close. She dropped her mug and ran. The barn. Smoke was curling from the side eaves. A low orange glow pulsed beneath the overhang like a monster waking from sleep. Juniper stood rigid near the oak tree, her eyes locked on the smoke. Clover darted in small frantic circles, bleeding in confusion. "God, no, no, no!" Brooke skidded to a stop at the barn door. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed the fire extinguisher from the hook and plunged inside. The fire hadn't spread far, yet. One bale of hay was fully engulfed. Flames licked the wooden wall. Sparks danced upward toward the rafters. She squeezed the handle and aimed the foam, her heartbeat drowning out the hiss of the spray. A few long, suffocating minutes later, the flames were out. Smoke hung in the air like a heavy curtain. Her throat burned, her hands shook. She staggered out into the sun, coughing, and collapsed onto the grass. The fire had been no accident. She saw it the moment she stood again. The metal latch on the back door of the barn, usually locked with a chain, had been pried open. A boot print marred the soil nearby, deep and deliberate. And tucked just inside the door, half covered by straw, was a burned matchbook. Logo still visible. Nevada Wildlife Exchange. Brooke's hands curled into fists. Wes. He'd been here. The sheriff arrived within 20 minutes, sirens silent, lights flashing. Deputy Daniels knelt beside the barn wall and examined the latch. Whoever did this knew where to hit, he muttered. Tried to start it in the driest corner. Brooke stood beside him, arms crossed tightly. It wasn't random. No, he said. It was a message. He took photos, bagged the matchbook, and promised to alert the federal agents already investigating Harlan. I'll assign someone to sit outside overnight. He won't get near you again. Brooke nodded, but in her gut she knew. No amount of patrols could ever fully erase the risk. People like Harlan didn't stop. Not until someone made them. That night, Lisa arrived unannounced. She found Brooke sitting in the barn, a damp rag in one hand, slowly scrubbing the soot-stained boards. You should be resting, Lisa said. I can't. Lisa crouched beside her. Let us take them for a few days, just until the heat dies down. Juniper and Clover can stay at the sanctuary. You'll know they're safe. Brooke stared at the boards, fingers clenched around the rag. If I send them away now, she said quietly, what message does that send to him? That he can scare me out of this? Lisa placed a hand on her shoulder. It's not fear. It's protection. Brooke shook her head. I made them a promise. Lisa's voice softened. And you've kept it. Every day. But you don't have to carry it alone. Brooke finally looked at her. Wouldn't you fight to the end, if they were yours? Lisa smiled sadly. They are all mine. Every animal at that sanctuary. And yes, I'd fight. But I'd also live to fight another day. In the end, she agreed to a compromise. The sanctuary would reinforce its night watch, and Brooke would bring Juniper and Clover there temporarily. But only after she could ride with them personally, and only with the understanding that she'd visit every day. Lisa accepted. But when Brooke opened the trailer gate the next morning, Juniper refused to enter. She stood firm, legs braced, neck high. Brooke coaxed, whispered, offered apple slices. Nothing. Clover pranced up the ramp easily, but Juniper remained rooted. She doesn't want to leave, Brooke said, heart sinking. Lisa watched, silent. Then don't make her, she said at last. Brooke blinked. What? Lisa sighed. I thought I was helping, but maybe this is her sanctuary now. Maybe she knows something we don't. They stood in silence for a long time. Then Brooke reached out, stroked Juniper's soft neck, and said quietly, You want to stay and fight with me? Juniper let out a single deep hum. Brooke turned to Lisa. Then we stay. That afternoon, Brooke made her final preparations. She installed another set of locks, reinforced the barn with flame-retardant panels, posted warning signs along the fence, and most importantly, she contacted Marissa Payne, the Portland attorney. We want to go to court, Brooke said over the phone. Not just for a restraining order. We want to file criminal charges for trespassing and attempted arson. I'll testify. I'll go public again if I have to. Marissa didn't hesitate. You'll have our full support. This time, he won't get away. But the true turning point came from an unexpected place. 3 days later, a man pulled into the driveway in a beat-up Ford Bronco. He was older, lean, with sun-creased skin and a ball cap. He stepped out slowly, holding something in his hand. Brooke stepped out cautiously. You Brooke Patterson? She nodded. I'm Jack Harlan, Wes' cousin. Brooke tensed. What do you want? He held up both hands, then extended the envelope. Not here to cause trouble, just to say something. And deliver this. Brooke didn't take it immediately. My family, Jack began. We got a long history of pretending not to see the damage we do. But I'm not like Wes. I saw the news. I saw that llama. What he did was unforgivable. He looked down. But maybe this helps. Brooke finally took the envelope. Inside, an affidavit. Signed. Sworn statement disavowing any claim to Juniper or any animal from Sunny Trails. Wes doesn't own a damn thing, Jack said. He never did. He was just hauling trailers and cashing side money. This proves it. Brooke stared at the paper, stunned. Why are you helping me? Jack shrugged. Because someone should have stopped him a long time ago, and because I saw what you did for her. He tipped his hat, turned, and drove away. That night, Brooke stood in the barn beside Juniper and Clover, the affidavit tucked in her back pocket. You were never his, she whispered. You were never anyone's property. You're free now, really free. Juniper leaned into her touch. The battle wasn't over. But the war? The war was beginning to turn. Summer deepened. The golden fields around Oak Hollow buzzed with bees and life. The barn, once darkened by fire and fear, was painted anew. A calm shade of blue, sunlight bouncing off its slanted roof. Inside, Juniper stood tall, her coat brushed daily to a soft cream, her body no longer frail but full of strength, her eyes holding stories no one could ever fully understand. Clover remained her shadow, energetic, cheerful, always nosing through pockets and overturning feed buckets like she had something to prove. The two were inseparable. Together, they were peace. Together, they were the rhythm of Brooke's new life. But peace, as Brooke had learned, wasn't something you held. It was something you made. And sometimes, it had to be fought for again and again. The trial of Wes Harlan began in mid-August. Federal prosecutors from Nevada and California brought multiple charges. Illegal animal trade, trespassing, attempted arson. Brooke was called to testify. She wore her denim jacket, boots caked in dust from the paddock, and stood straight in front of the jury, voice calm but unwavering. I found her starving, she told them. Alone, left to die. And still she trusted me. That's what animals do. They give us chances we don't deserve. He doesn't. Photos of the burned barn were shown. Surveillance footage of the man near her gate. The matchbook. But it was the story, not the evidence, that moved the room. The jury convicted on all charges. 5 years, no parole, not a life sentence. But it was enough. Enough to let her breathe again. When she returned home, Juniper greeted her at the gate. Not with fear, not with trembling, but with a low, soft hum that vibrated through Brooke's chest like a melody. You're safe, Brooke whispered. We both are. Life resumed, not as it was before, but as something better. The therapy program grew. By autumn, Brooke had created weekly sessions for local schools, veterans, foster families. Lisa helped register the farm as a non-profit. Juniper and Clover Sanctuary. Clover became a minor celebrity. Children drew her on thank you cards with crooked hearts and sparkles, often labeled Best Goat in shaky crayon handwriting. And Juniper? She remained quiet, steady, sacred, a living symbol of survival. But time, for all it gives, also takes. It was a November morning when Brooke first noticed Juniper's steps were slower. Nothing alarming, just a hesitation near the gate, a pause at the slope near the barn. Brooke adjusted her feeding schedule, added supplements, consulted Dr. Levin, who examined her carefully. She's older than we thought, he said gently. The stress she endured probably shaved years off her lifespan. Brooke nodded slowly. But she's okay now, right? For now, she's not in pain, but you'll want to watch. She'll tell you when it's time. Brooke sat by Juniper that evening, brushing her slowly, eyes misted. You've always known more than me, she murmured. So when you need me to let go, I will. Winter came. Then spring. Juniper's pace slowed. Her naps grew longer. She stopped climbing the gentle rise to the oak and stayed closer to the barn. Clover never left her side. The therapy visits became less frequent. Brooke didn't explain why. She didn't need to. The ones who came understood. And then, one soft April morning, Juniper didn't rise with the sun. Brooke found her curled in the straw, breath steady but shallow, eyes open and calm. Clover lay beside her, head tucked against her side. Brooke knelt beside them and laid her palm on Juniper's face. No more fighting, she whispered. You did it. You made it home. Juniper exhaled once, long and warm, and then she was gone. They buried her beneath the oak tree, the one she had always loved, the one she had chosen. Children sent letters. Grown men cried. Volunteers gathered quietly and planted wildflowers around the grave. Lisa brought a carved wooden sign. Here rests Juniper. Never owned, never broken, always free. Brooke didn't speak during the service. She couldn't. But that night, she wrote in her journal for the last time. She was left behind, forgotten, and somehow she found her way into the world again. Into my world. I didn't save her. She saved me. Not once. Every day. I will never forget the weight of her head against my shoulder. I will never forget her silence, or her song. She closed the journal and placed it on the shelf, right beside a framed photo of Juniper and Clover, the two of them napping in the grass, sunlight dappling their coats. In the months that followed, the sanctuary grew. New animals arrived, a rescued alpaca, a blind donkey, an elderly pig with a permanent limp. People came. They laughed. They healed. And Brooke? She healed too. Every time she looked at Clover, who still slept by the oak. Every time a child smiled through tears and touched soft fur with shaking hands. Every time she whispered, "You're safe now," and meant it. She would never stop missing Juniper. But she would never be alone again. Because love, when real, never ends. It becomes soil, it becomes roots, and from it something new grows, always.